From Kenya to Colombia, from Iraq to Korea, in slums, in schools, in prisons, and in theatres. Every day, people gather at TEDx events around the world to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. Today, you are part of a global conversation about our shared future. So what is this TEDx? TEDx is an initiative of the TED Conference, a nonprofit devoted to ideas worth spreading. We grant free licenses to allow TED-like events to spread globally. This event today is based on the TED Conference format and ideals, but is independently organized by your local community. So please make sure to thank the team of volunteers who worked so hard on today's event. It's their ideas, dedication, and time that made it all possible. It's they who booked all the speakers, and the views you'll hear today are, of course, those of those speakers, not necessarily of TEDs. But we hope their talks spark an exciting conversation among you. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for openness and for critical thinking, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you'll take out. And now, on with the show.
We have the next speaker who will share the idea on how to create a more livable and harmonious environment among each and every one of us, with the topic of the art of conflict and why we need it. Please welcome our speaker from Year 11, Kiara Riyanti Hutapea Zhang.
Hi everyone, my name is Kiara Riyanti Hutapea Zhang. An Italian first name, Chinese Indonesian middle and last names, born in the East Coast, raised in Indonesia, attending the British International School Jakarta, alongside all of you with cultures as or even more complicated than mine. In this ever interconnected world, interactions between cultures are increasing in importance and in instances. We continue to see a cohesion of cultures, and that very well may lead to conflict because of disparities in communication. That's why it's so important that we understand conflict and how we can do it well. Before we go into 3 reasons why we need conflict and why we fear it, it's important to understand what conflict actually is. So I have a little activity for you guys. I'm going to say a word, and I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to imagine in your head what that word really looks like to yourself. Ready? Conflict. 3, 2, 1. Well, if you imagined absolute annihilation, complete destruction, like war or that fight you had with your little sibling, Adric Zhang, I'm talking about you, then it's important, then you're not wrong, but you are the perfect audience for my talk today. In this talk, you see, many of us have this incomplete perception of what conflict is, that it's always negative and that it will always spiral out of control. But with everything in life, there's always a positive to the negative. So in this talk today, we're going to change that devastating image in your head to something more positive and beneficial for us as humankind, to show you how conflict is so beneficial when it's done right. As humans, we have the natural instinct to fear conflict. Why? We tend to realize that conflict are these parts on my right, that it can lead to fear, it can lead to hatred, it can lead to violence, it can lead to bloodshed. But we tend to forget that, again, there's always a positive to the negative. We tend to misunderstand that there are positive parts of conflict on my left. Truth, honesty, solvency, and fresh ideas. Because of the negative parts of conflict on my right, entire countries, whole institutions, every single one of us sitting in this audience today, we tend to avoid conflict. We tend to avoid it for the negative parts on my right. We end up forgetting that we need to benefit from the parts on my left. If you're not going to believe me, the 16-year-old girl standing on the stage today, I'm sure you'll believe Dale Carnegie in his book, The Power of Conflict. He said, if two people on the job agree all the time, then one is useless. If both of them disagree all the time, then both are useless. That goes to show how conflict done too little is as dangerous as conflict done too much. Now that leads me very beautifully on to 3 reasons why we need conflict. For A, advancement. For I, to solve injustices. And for T, to speak truth in love. Abbreviated as IT, to show you in teen speak that conflict is all right. So the first reason why we need conflict is for advancement. What am I talking about? As humans, we have the responsibility to improve our lives and the people's lives around us. We need to identify the current issue in the status quo. We have to think of a better situation, and we need to be steadfast in facing conflict that will inevitably lie along the way. Let's talk about the electric car. The electric car is one of the most relevant examples of conflict done well in our time and age. All the way from its conceptualization to its commercialization, the electric car has gone through numerous amounts of conflict. When it first started to get researched and developed, people in the scientific field did not even believe it was a possible feat, that it was too far into a sci-fi movie, it's too futuristic for the science field to be able to pull it off. As it is developed and now going for trials, it went against the politics of the state of California because there were not enough government regulations to support its trial. And lastly, as we know it today, it's going through its commercialization stage, for example, in the form of Tesla. Even then, it's facing backlash from the complacent, old, traditional oil and gas companies who want to maintain their monopolist market. But as it's here today, as we know it, in the market available for all of us, it creates a win-win-win situation. A win for the entrepreneur, it's a win for the countries who are main stakeholders, and it's a win for our beloved Mother Earth and our planet. This same message was echoed by John F. Kennedy. Too often, we enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought. That goes to show you that if we as a society are too complacent, too comfortable in having complacent, unison opinions, there will never be any advancement. So we talked about advancement. Let's go into solving injustices. We as humans, the moment we're born, we have that natural instinct to uphold justice and morality. When we are born, we understand that it's our responsibility to help the victims find their voice and achieve the justice that they deserve. I'm going to give you an example of my personal experience in facing conflict to get solvency to injustice. So, Bantar Gebang is a place in Indonesia. It is the largest landfill site not only in the country, but in the entirety of Southeast Asia. It spans 400 acres wide, housing 39 million tons of trash, and most importantly, housing 100,000 individuals who are living on the site illegally. There are also 7,000 children that because they don't have access to birth certificates nor government-issued identification cards, they are not able to reap the benefits of public welfare and free education that are made for people just like them. So because this is a socioeconomic issue I'm very passionate about, in 2020, a couple of my friends and I, just teenage girls in British Jakarta, we created an organization called Cases for Care Indonesia. We have the plan to build 5 libraries on site Bantar Gebang in 5 makeshift schools to support United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 4, quality education, and to provide these children with informal education they otherwise would not be able to get. After a lot of trial and tribulation, we realized we would inevitably face conflict with the families there. They were parents who would rather their children work during the day and beg on the streets instead of earning an education that they deserve. I face conflict from my family, and my friends face conflict from theirs, because this site was a taboo area in Indonesia where no one would talk about the devastating situation there. But after all the trials we went through, there's something that someone wise told me, and I've tried to adopt it in my life, even until now. Before someone's legality, before someone's status, before what someone is male or female, we are all humans first. So we have the responsibility to help each other, to help victims gain the voice that they otherwise cannot find themselves. So we talked about advancement, we talked about solving injustices. Let's talk about the last reason why we need conflict: to speak truth in love. Universally, in every single culture, whether it be Western or Eastern, love is taught to be accepting, it is taught to be gentle, it is taught to be patient. But I think the most important part of love is how healthy communication can stem from it. With the people we love, we have the responsibility to tell them what they can do to improve their lives. As Warren Wiersbe once said, truth without love is brutality. Love without truth is hypocrisy. That goes to show how love, truth, and conflict work hand in hand. Another example I'm going to give you of my personal experience in facing conflict in achieving truth and love is in 2020, I had the wonderful opportunity of representing Team BSJ in the British International Education Association Science Competition. Now, that year's idea was Save Our Shores. Our team and I had the passion of focusing on the Citarum River. The Citarum River is the world's dirtiest river, spanning 270 kilometers wide and just 1 hour away from where we are now, the elite British school, Jakarta. Obviously, the team and I had the responsibility, we felt, to try to make change, speaking truth and love to the inhabitants living there. Again, we faced conflict. We faced conflict with the families who were scared of change, who wanted to maintain their old livelihoods, because they couldn't see a future without the trash piling up on their doorsteps. Because Team BSJ won that competition that year, we brought immense awareness to such a local issue at an international level, and I'm so glad to say that along with the help from the government, along with other nonprofit organizations, the Citarum River looks like from this to this. Because of that, it's very clear that conflict will lie along the way to getting truth and love, and we have to be steadfast in facing that. So the takeaway is threefold. We need conflict for advancement, we need conflict to solve injustice, and we need conflict to speak truth in love. Again, abbreviated as I to show you conflict is all right. But no matter how necessary conflict may be, it's important that we understand that it must be done right. It must be done gently, with respect, and by attacking the issue, not the person. Abbreviated as GRA, the sound we make when we're frustrated and the sound we must avoid. My name is Kiara Riyanti Zhang, and that was The Art of Conflict. Thank you.
Kiara Zhang, everyone. Now, we face conflicts every day, and sometimes we are in an autopilot state when we're operating in such. Now, Kiara has deliberately reminded us that we should be conscious in times of conflict, that it is all right. Some of us might tend to avoid conflicts. Some of us might, most of us maybe, seen conflict as a negative way. But now we're reminded that conflict is necessary, and the most important thing is how can we still manage to love each other during the times.